afternoon, morning, whatever time you happen to be listening or checking in. Welcome to the Just Jackin' Around podcast. I plan on having some theme music at the very start, and I will be writing the song, so might be a sec. Until then, I'm gonna toss in some royalty-free music that you will have no doubt heard by now. I hope it's chill and relaxing and you like it. Welcome to the podcast. This is going to be the pilot episode, the first one, giving her a shot. We're going to talk about pilots, look and fly, their impact, how silver, foxy, freaking smooth and sexy they look a lot of the time. Love a man and woman in uniform. And, the birth of flight. Pretty crazy thing, flight. Flying around. We used to think it was just birds, bats, bees that did it, but we figured it out. Wasn't that hard? If a bumblebee could do it, how are we not going to be able to do it? You know what I mean? Yeah, it's an idea as old as us seeing a bird being like, whoa, wonder what that would be like. We used to measure distance, like as the crow flies, which was how long it took something traveling like 60 miles an hour in the air without anything else in the way, which, I'd be jealous if I was walking around on horses. I'm jealous even on cars. Flying is awesome. Classic dream ability, classic. If you could have any one superpower, what would it be? And you gotta admit, taking a date through the clouds, awfully romantic. If you could fly, you'd be sweeping people off their feet, literally, Skyscrapers, you could just hang out on the roof of. I'm jealous of that. I personally, if I could fly, I think I would go to the woods, to like a forest, and pretend to be a fairy, for sure. Try to not get hit in the face by a tree. I could also go over to rivers and fly over them, look at my reflection, look at all the little fishies, and not worry about, destroying a native environment. You will find out I am a bit of a hippie through this time. I don't know if you could tell by the golden locks, but yeah, definitely a make love, not war kind of guy. I also think if I could fly, mountain climbers I'd just flex on all the time. I'd go to Mount Everest, anything hard, Kilimanjaro, whatever, and I'd be like, oh, you're breaking a sweat over there, huh? Must be awful hard using your legs to climb a mountain instead of just floating over it at your leisure. I would definitely also hide at the top of Mount Olympus and probably literally play God for a second, just because I could. I'd probably end up getting shot. Cool part about Superman, he could fly, but he was also bulletproof, and I think if you could fly and no one else could, and you were a little bit of a dick about it, you'd definitely get your ass shot, 100%. People already throw beer bottles at drones and stuff like that. If you think you're flying over some guy's house and he's like, this uppity dick thinks he's allowed to fly and I gotta walk around like a mongrel, I don't think that's gonna fly. Anywho, yeah, I would say the start of flying ideas probably is prehistoric. But we have some old myths about flying. Daedalus and Icarus. Icarus, sick as hell. Led Zeppelin, also kind of about flying and the oxymoron of a Zeppelin being made out of lead. Frederick von Zeppelin, who invented those things, he fought in the American Civil War, but he was a German. And after the American Civil War, where we're screwing off balloons, which were important, which is hilarious, he was like, you know what? These big balloons, I bet we could stretch them out and make them be gigantic airships. And he was right. But let's go back. Let's go back before Civil War. Let's go back to 1400s, Renaissance era, where they're oh, flying, science is cool. Science rules. Bill Nye the Science Guy would have done great in Renaissance Europe. Leonardo da Vinci, one of two famous Leonardos we'll be talking about today, had all kinds of crazy ornithocopters and spiraling helicopters. He tried to make glide suits. He tried to make little leather wings and canvas wings with wood. And that would kind of be the glider shtick, would be people's main attempts at flying. People would do something called tower jumping, where they just climb a big old tower and try to glide, and it would be a success if they didn't die. They'd be like, successful landing, it only cost me both my legs. Who needs to walk when you can fall with style? Yeah, Buzz Lightyear / Woody, the last name, would have been great philosophers of flight for the first long while. It was just falling in style. And that kind of changed in like the 1800s with someone called Sir George Cayley, who is called the father of the airplane. He tried to develop something called a governable glider, which is when you literally try to follow style and purpose. And he carried an unnamed boy like with a glider across a river. People were also experimenting like before remote control drones with radio. They were still trying to build engine-powered, unmanned flight, which I think is pretty cool. Circling back to Daedalus real quick, he was quite the character. Built the labyrinth, worked for the king of Crete. Shout out Percy Jackson books. But Icarus had wax wings, and they would burn and the wax would melt if he flew too close to the sun, and if he flew too close to the ocean, the spray of the sea would get up on him and wet the wings, and that would also make him not fly. So he had to stay in this little Goldilocks zone for his whole flight, and he flew too close to the sun and died. And I think that metaphor, myth, pretty metal, pretty sick, pretty good allegory for humanity in general, you know? Now we got like we really like our Greek myths. Like the American Prometheus is about Oppenheimer. And I would say if the Cold War turned hot, that would be Icarus with nukes, 100%. So I just think that's cool. Also, shout out to Leonardo da Vinci. Renaissance man, that's how I'm trying to be. Literal jack of all trades. Did amazing things in art, science, medicine. I just all around tried to understand the universe and did a pretty darn good job, especially compared to people that we had back then and nowadays. Yeah, they had these things. Aviation really started to get close to actually flying in like the early 1900s, and then it was a race because everyone was like, we're almost cracking the case on these things. People were trying out crazy ideas. They had like cross-shaped planes with random boxes all over them. This guy created something called hold on, I got notes, guys. I'm taking notes for this freaking thing. I've researched so much, read the Wikipedia page on aviation, exhausting. A guy named Samuel Langley had something called an aerodome, and those were just circles that he put an engine on, and he was flying those things like 3,000 meters right before the Wright brothers figured it out, which I think is pretty stinking funny. Yeah, they weren't manned, and he screwed one up like 2 weeks before the infamous first flight in North Carolina, which is like their main claim to fame. Although Asheville's pretty cool. My sister's been over there a bunch, and I hear the hiking's fantastic. But yeah, Orville and Wilbur Wright, awful names. I'm sure they did get some ass off of discovering flight, as one should. But, you know, how many Orvilles do you guys know that are famous? Like, it's Orville Wright and Orville Redenbacher. So it's popcorn and flying. And I don't know if she'd bring back the name Orville, but personally, that's a name I think that can stay buried. These guys, it was 1903 when they first had their flight. It was like 1907 when they had one that could go more than 200 feet without falling to pieces. And they made some fat stacks because these flying pioneers, everyone's trying to crack the code, you know? So eventually they get their patent on not even actually the airplane, it's like the steering mechanism that lets them move the tail up and down, which is still something we do today. And that's where they got most of their money from. But enough about the money. The party scene. If you're the only guy that can fly, even when ballooning was super popular, which it was, weirdly, Europe was all about it. It was like America and France, which were leading the way in aviation, which is kind of, funny. This is also like pretty close to the end of the Napoleonic era. So France was like fresh off of the dictator, general emperor thing, which was pretty dictatorial. But Napoleon actually cared about his people too. So it was like, you win some, you lose some. Um, yeah, so they're flying this thing. The turnaround, the Industrial Revolution and its consequences, guys. The exponential growth of stuff is absolutely insane. It was 1907 when the Wright brothers developed their Flyer 3. It was 1914 when World War I was starting. And they're immediately like, let's get these airplanes in here. Let's see what we can do. Let's fight a war with cavalry charges and bombing runs from airplanes and figuring out how to perfectly time machine gun bullets so that they come out in between propellers going. It's insane. It's absolutely crazy. And mustard gas, and this is not the World War One episode, but military pushing of the envelope helps a lot with technology growth, and it super did for flight. So 1918, World War One wraps up, flight advancements are out the wazoo, and now we're chill. And flying is still the new fad, but now it's safer and more accessible. You got people like Charles Lindbergh making a non-stop flight across the Atlantic. You got people like Wiley, Hardeman Post flying literally around the entire planet in days, which is something they never had done before. So you got like flight celebrities, like being a pilot was a celebrity thing. Like Lindbergh, you have the Lindbergh baby that gets kidnapped, and that's a like headline news, breaking news for the whole country and world, pretty much. And you got disasters like the Hindenburg, which for those few years that Zeppelins were popping, I would have gone. I wouldn't have smoked, but I'd get drunk on a big balloon. That sounds awesome. And the flights were smooth. They also had something called like not seaplanes like we know, but like like commercial sized, like half the size of a Boeing 747 or something like that nowadays, that just lands in the water, and that's all they do. Speaking of giant planes that land in the water, Howard Hughes, not Hugh Hefner, Hugh Hefner's Playboy. Howard Hughes was a big aviation guy in the early time, that he built a ginormous, I think it was called the Goliath, a ginormous plane that lands in the ocean off of just his money. He was a pilot, super rich, had OCD. Ladies, he likes control. I do want to talk about how sexy pilots are, and I'm going to do that right after these short messages. This episode of the Just Jackin' Around podcast is brought to you by my unending need for attention and my boredom that is just so deep that I think my words are worth your time and attention. This episode of the Just Jackin' Around podcast is also brought to you by my fear of silence and the unending lengths that I will go to fill up the void with my own senseless, banal commentary that I hope you guys like and is funny. This might be a little too educational of a video, and I'll work on that in the future. And finally, for this last sponsor of our video, we have procrastination, which without this episode would have been done at least 4 years ago. Procrastination. If your destination is an application or something that actually means something and is worthwhile in this world, procrastination will fill up the hours and hours of your time and just really put a fire under your ass because you waited way too long to do that thing that you're supposed to do. And it's always going to bite you in the butt. Time is a one-way street, and procrastination helps you skip right along. So now we're in between the world wars. People are flying. People like Amelia Earhart are making moves, breaking down boundaries. Flight is helping feminism. Pretty sick. Amelia Earhart, Probably yet another lesbian that I would have a crush on, but she could get it. Yeah, she had crabs at the end, but it was a lot more tragic and terrifying than normal crabs. Coconut crabs, which probably ate her and scare me a little bit every day. Those things are so strong. They're like 3 feet wide, can break through a coconut or your leg with ease. They eat flesh, they eat seabirds. They're scary. Pubic lice are also scary, aka regular, or not even regular crabs, but crabs that you could get and live with. Although, imagine if when you got crabs, it was actual, like, if you had a Japanese spider crab in your pants with like a 12-foot long leg span, that'd also be terrifying in a very different way. Anywho, talking about sexy pilots, Howard Hughes, billionaire, or at the time, like relative to now, he was a millionaire at the time, but now he'd be a billionaire. A lot of money to be made in this flying stuff. And speaking of Howard Hughes, who played him in The Aviator, Leonardo DiCaprio, the second famous Leonardo, who's apparently all over flight, because this guy just wants to be jonesing for poontang from land, air, and sea. This guy is in a lot of plane scenes. Like Inception has a giant plane scene that's super important. You got Catch Me If You Can, which is based on the true story of Frank Abagnale Jr., the Skyway man who would bounce checks around and pretend to be a pilot to fly for free. So he'd just be bouncing checks and traveling. And those two in conjunction, it's kind of a new to that crime scene. He did it in the 50s and 60s, I believe. Totally changed the game. This guy was James Bonding his way across the sky and getting drunk on planes, something he didn't really do because he was a kid at the time. He was like literally drinking milk on flights, but getting drunk on planes, also amazing. Flying kind of sucks now, and I think it's crappy that we take it for granted when it's literally defying the laws of nature and science that we understood before 100 and some change years, like 120 years ago. It sucks that flying's boring now. Like, take an edible, get some drinks in you, and be like, oh my god, we're literally 40,000 feet in the air flying at hundreds of miles an hour. I'm cutting the world into pieces. Like, the world is small now, but you can fly around it in a day. That's crazy. That's literally so insane that we don't just freak out about that all the time. But before we get to the 60s, I guess we should cover World War II a little bit. Jets, the Germans were crazy with aviation. They were like, oh, French and American people? Let me show you how to do this the right way. And they were building rockets, they were building crazy jets. It went from propeller to jet engine in less than 50 years. And that's so crazy. It took us hundreds of years to figure out propellers or gliders that didn't kill you. And parachutes too. Like all of these were trying to, the school of thought of aerodynamics was pretty new. It's like in the early 1800s that Sir George Cayley guy, father of the airplane, he helped found aerodynamics as like a room of study. So anyway, you got like B-52 bombers. We're making crazy strides. The 20th century is definitely one of the craziest 100-year periods on Earth, and it might have been the one that pulled the trigger on destroying the environment with plastic and gas. And sorry, I'll rein in the hippie a little bit. But yeah, now after the war, these pilots are just, you trust salt and pepper, mustachioed aviators literally just for that. It's sexy, flying sexy. You got Top Gun, Tom Cruise type beat, which is like, pretty homoerotic sexy, but still sexy, not complaining. The gays have been in the air for a while. Shout out to gay airline attendants, stewards, people that let you get to your seat real nice and easy. I had one on my flight to San Diego, which was the last time I flew, and he rocked. And I got a free Jack and Coke out of it. Shout out to gays, air gay. Ergo, it's hot. The little lines, they got the cap, they got special uniforms. You got Leonardo DiCaprio being all over it. Like Titanic, that's how he's coming for you from the sea. whatever land movies, most movies he's in, and then he's in the air. He's coming down. He's pretending to be a pilot, a doctor, a lawyer. Frank Abagnale Jr., sorry. Catch Me If You Can, great movie, fantastic movie. Steven Spielberg kills it. Tom Hanks, performance of a lifetime. Just kidding. But not bad. It's a great cast. Christopher Walken's in it. Does a speech about 2 mice fall into a bucket of cream. 1 mouse drowns, but the other mouse, he kicks his leg so hard he turns that cream into butter. As of this day, I am that second mouse. He does, masterpiece. What a script. I'm a little jealous. I wish I could lie so hard that I'm wanted in 14 countries. And I guess I could. I'm the only thing holding myself back from that. But tempting. That's all I'm going to say on that. I can't believe a guy named Orville literally invented flight. Like, where are the guys named Jack inventing stuff? It's because I didn't have a fun name. Wilbur? Even Wilbur is like, you're a pig, if I'm thinking of Wilbur now. You know what I mean? Shout out to Charlotte's Rep. D.B. Cooper? That happened in the 70s. D.B. Cooper, another con man, is the only case of aerial piracy that is yet unsolved. In 1971 in Washington, he took a hostage and was like, I need $200,000. I have a bomb and I'm going to explode it if you guys don't give me what I want. And he got it, and that's a $1.5 million in today's money. So $200,000 in 1971 was a lot of money. And he got away with it. They landed the plane. They had he was talking to this one stewardess using this fake name who is apparently a character from like a Canadian comic book series that was never circulated here. So people think he was maybe a veteran, or he was a smart guy. He got away with it. He's the only ever unsolved, like FBI was looking into it 20 years later, like the 1980s, they were looking into it, no dice. So he hopped off this plane. He asked for 4 parachutes, a main and a spare, and then another set, because he wanted to make people think his hostage is jumping off the plane with him, which would have been kind of dumb, because then they're definitely never letting him go free. But anyhow, they land, they bring the money on the plane in 20s. He is like negotiating every time. He's a smart guy. Any stuff they're trying to throw at him, he's like, nah, I'm alone back here with this girl. You guys stay up there. We'll figure it out. Let's go in the air. He wanted them to take off with like the ladder down. They're like, no freaking way. And so he sent them towards Mexico City after they landed in Seattle. They said they were going to refill in the Tahoe Reno airport. Didn't happen. This guy jumped out like half an hour into the flight. Presumably, they don't know exactly when, but they know that the ladder went down at like 8 and they left the ground at like 7:40. So he jumps out, parachutes. We don't know if he lived or died. He might have just died and they never found the body. But they looked for like 10 years. And then in 1980, St. Helens erupted, and then probably whatever trace they had, whatever shot they had, gone. D.B. Cooper, represent. Shout out to D.B. Cooper. Shout out to MF Doom, referencing in that one song. That's pretty sick, to get away with it and just be like, hey, what's up, United States government? Like Frank Abagnale Jr., end of that story. He gets caught in France. Classic French. They take him, he gets extradited to the United States in like 3 years of rotting in a French prison. It's a cool book. That was what the movie was based on, and the prison and the book sounds a lot worse. Anywho, gets sent back to the United States, and then he is hired by the FBI to help in their financial crimes unit, because he's literally so smart. His dad worked in stationery. He can forge a check better than most people on the planet. He he bought a printer that they used at the banks, or at one of the 5 places where they make checks, that puts the ink on the paper. Like, this kid was a smart kid. And yeah, you gotta be smart to figure out flying. It was not for the dumb. A lot of dumb people jumped out of towers, out of balloons, and were like, I got it. You gotta imagine, literally how much blood was shed for this thing that we take for granted. Now we're just like, flight delay of 2 hours. How are airlines fumbling this bag? Like, air travel used to be more smooth. Like, the seats were bigger. You could get effed up on the plane. You got champagne you flowing, you got brewskis, you got whiskey. Frank Sinatra, when he was like, come fly with, like they were singing songs about flying. It was so cool and new. And he would just pop down to Cuba, get fucked up on the plane, like doing coke, all kinds of stuff, and then bounce back around. Private jets, yeah, they're doing a lot of harm, but pretty pimp. No lie. Literally, they were like Air Force One. Let's give one to the president. Let's private jet that son of a gun, fly him up there, and have like. It's crazy that we even have stuff like that. That's just in the air all the time. A navigational base for the course of the nation can be done through the air. You can be signing laws, making military orders. They can fly that thing around also for like days. Like they can refuel mid-flight. It's insane. Yeah. Jets are cool. They tried supersonic commercial travel for a while, and then we complained too much for that. I'm pro train. I wish we had more trains here, but flying is really sick. But there was a day when everything changed, a day that we'll never forget. I was like 1 when 9/11 happened, and definitely changed the face of modern flying. Way less chill, understandably. You can't be having that. I will say, almost 17, 16 years later, when I was in high school, I did show choir, and a school, a bunch of rich kids went there. They have the most roundabouts in the world there. I won't say their name, but it sounds like a candy. You can do the math. I'm from Indiana. They did a 9/11 show choir show, and that was so funny to me in a dark, dark way. Obviously in modern times, Israel's got their 9/11 going on, so I think it's finally okay to joke about ours. And see people dying sucks, I will say that. Shout out to people that died. But anyways, let's keep it light. They sang Light 'em up, 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 like the Fall Out Boy song, like light 'em up, 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 light 'em up, 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 light 'em up, 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 I'm on fire. And like they had a bunch of real names at the end on a black screen. They had fire effects. It was insane. Here is a list of songs I think that they could have done as well on that show. They could have done another Fall Out Boy song. They could have been, we're going down, down, and into the run. I think that's funny. Burning Down the House from the Talking Heads. That would have been a fun one. Beady-doo. Another one. Bites the Dust as the second guitar is hit, obviously. It's Going Down. I'm Yelling Timber. Kesha, anyone? Little, burn, baby, burn. Disco Inferno. That's an oldie. Joe Bros, Keep It Modern. I'm burning up for you, baby. I think that could be fun. You got, when they start giving up hope as the flames leave from the center of the building to the outer edges, you got jump, bow, 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 bow. Or Van Halen. Little Third Eye Blind. I wish you would step back from that ledge, my friend. Or big finale. This girl is on fire. And yeah, I wish every song they had either related to jumping or fire or crashing and burning, but that's just on show choir jealousy, I guess. Yeah. The air has been a place for crime. Like we're talking about some con men. And it's also been sick, There's been cool crimes. There's been less tragic, let's be invading wars to make Dick Cheney money about, Yeah, I think it's okay to now talk about 9/11 like, maybe I'll kind of wasn't the only person to... we definitely, at least we capitalized on that situation in a fucked up way. Anyways, I support the troops. There's been cool crimes. There's also been other tragedies that are like more celebrity based. A bunch of people died in plane crashes. Buddy Holly, Leonard Skinner, Richie Valens, Kobe, Swish. Every time you shoot, even today, these people are still remembered. Stevie Ray Vaughan, great blues guy. Glenn Miller, big band. Patsy Cline, crazy. My mom loves her. John Denver, Country Roads. He should have took them instead of the plane. These people must have been flying spirit. That's why they call it that. Otis Redding was not sitting on a dock by the bay. Jim Croce, Big Bad Leroy Brown. That's tragic. Those are all tragedies. Like in Juice WRLD, like planes aren't where you want to be dying. You know, let me tell you. It's scary. Like some people are really scared of flying. Honestly, understandable, bro. This is like no one's evolved for this. You know what I mean? This is past 200 years. This is even starting to like balloons. Like humans have never been that high in the air. Like unless they were exploded off of a volcano or climbing a mountain. Like once you're higher than a mountain, you're higher than 99.99% of all of humanity that has ever existed. And I think that's pretty crazy. There have been cool crimes, I will say, like a fella in New York. They're still sad a little bit because if they don't land it, rough. So you know what, we'll go sad one more time and then we'll go happy ending. So not like a massage show. There was this guy in Seattle, Richard Russell, I believe his name is, and he stole a plane. He worked for the airport, and he stole a plane, and he was flying around on said plane, doing flips. I saw the video. It was cool. I'll give him full credit for that. And then he crashed it into Puget Sound, which was a lot less cool. But if you're going to go out, like, that's the way to do it. Like, my old dream way to go out was to tape a bunch of bombs to myself and crash it into the super volcano underneath Yellowstone which I don't condone. This is purely hypothetical and for comedy. Because if I'm going out with a bang, you know, the biggest bang possible. So now, probably just, I don't know, copulent in the streets, orgy till the end of time type beat. But that's just me. Yeah, that was in like 2022. So we're still going a little crazy. I want to finish off the story about a guy, New York guy, named Thomas Fitzpatrick, who stole a plane in New Jersey in the 50s at like 3 a.m. because at a bar he was drinking at, some guy bet him that he could not make it from Jersey to New York in 15 minutes. So he went down to Jersey, went to this airfield, stole a plane, piloted it excellently back. The New York Times is writing about it. They called it a fine landing and a feat of aeronautics. And he landed it in the street, like 119th Street. Got a $100 fine, which is like $1,000 today, but still got it pretty easy. 2 years later, he's drinking at another bar in a different part of town, and some guy is like, he's telling the story. I would be telling the story every bar I go to, for sure. I'd be like, yeah, one time I was drunk and stole a plane, parked it right in the street, just got a ticket, no big deal. So this guy's like, you're full of shit. He goes and does it again, the same like airfield. And the first time they didn't press charges, but the second time the judge was like, all right, yeah, you can't be just doing this every other Tuesday. So he did 6 months in jail. But I just want to say, that guy's a hero. He's a veteran, and he was also the first New Yorker to get injured in Korea. So don't speak ill of my mans. And I think that will come to a landing on the pilot episode with that. I want these episodes to be in between half an hour to an hour long, I'd say, when it's just my lonesome. When I have co-hosts, it might be a little different. Guests, definitely, I'll try to change it to suit their needs more, and we'll theme the episodes towards them. When it's just me, I'll be talking about whatever I want. All right, so get ready for that. I'll be passionate. Don't worry. I want this to be worth your while and entertaining. It's still the goal, whether it's informative, like this one was a little teachy, or just silly, goofy fun. We're just jacking around. That's what this is for. We're going to figure it out. It's for me. It's for you. It's for folks who don't want to be that serious for a while. Just be a little silly. Just be a little goofy. And jack around. And that's what we're for. And I hope to see you guys for some more jacking around on the next episode. So thank y'all very much. Bye.